Last week we saw Noah come out of the ark. They had been in for 377 days. And the first thing Noah did was to sacrifice to the Lord and give thanks. God had ensured that a remnant would survive the wrath that he put on the earth, and that serves as a reminder that God's character keeps the principles intact, that he will have a people and they will be protected by him as long as he is their God. Many times throughout Scripture, God says they will be my people and I will be their God. God will always have a remnant that he will call his own. And if you remember, we talked about the flood and the ark was a picture of the rapture and the tribulation. So he is showing you that I'm going to save my people. And we want to be one of his people. Okay? And the only way you can do that is have him as your God. Another thing we should think about is the earth has substantially changed from before the flood. In Genesis 1, we saw God create the heavens and the earth, and he said it was good. It was something he made in his will for us and him. Then man's sin came into the garden, and he made that he had made, and mankind was thrown out. Outside the garden was drastically different than inside. The earth was cursed, and man had to make his own way. Now we have the flood, and everything has changed once more. I just wanted to bring out, that there was perfection, and then there was outside, and now there's the flood. And each time the earth changes on each one of these. Nothing looked the same, and nothing was the same. Everything that had been spoiled by sin was now washed clean by the flood. There was now a chance for a new beginning. The water canopy was gone, revealing a different sky, and a varied temperature became evident. If you'll remember, they had a mist in the air, and it was like a tropical climate. So when the mist came out of the air and fell to the earth, and the atmosphere changed from probably around 30 pounds per square inch to 14.7 that it is today, even the air got thinner. And the earth was different. Even the sky looked different. You know how when you look at the sunset, you're looking at through the air this way. And the sun's over here and it's orangey looking. It's got a tinge to it. Well, now it's blue because we're looking straight up. Well, the air was much thicker back then with the water in it and everything, and I'm sure some people have said it might have looked even pink, is what the color they think it was. So now we have more UV coming through because the air is thinner and there's no more moisture to block it. Clouds block our UV light right now. That's just in the air around us, okay? If we believe the atmosphere was a tropical mist before the flood, then there were no seasons before the flood. The atmospheric pressure had dropped by approximately 50%, which now made it harder to breathe at altitude. Today we are experimenting with hyperbaric chambers that are able to heal wounds quickly and cure diseases that don't respond well to antibiotics. Just that alone may have explained the longer lives before the flood than after. Thinner air let more UV rays through to age people quicker. So right now you can go to, let's say you have diabetes and you're about to lose your foot. They can put it in a hyperbaric chamber and save your foot. Because they can force oxygen through your skin to give it life. If you have a sore that won't heal, they can force it to heal by putting more pressure on it with oxygen. So that's why there wasn't disease and if you cut yourself, you wouldn't get an infection and things like that because it wouldn't live in it. The world had completely changed, and Noah and his family would have to adapt their ways or learn new ones. Just think about coming out of a completely different world into a new one. You had to learn how to adapt to this new world. Okay?
Right.
So Genesis 9:1. So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." You remember we used to talk about in the first few chapters, God would say he blessed them. A blessing was a commandment. He said, "Be fruitful and multiply." That's a blessing to receive the word from God. Now, we know what multiplication is, but do we know what being fruitful is? This is doing God's will. It's not about working and building houses and building things, and it's about building a relationship with God. He wants us He is our Father, and He wants something back. In other words, if a dog makes puppies, then God wants to make people like Him that will bless other people. Okay, so that's being fruitful. Now here's a new one. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, and every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, and all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. So this is a new thing He's doing. He's telling the animals to be afraid of humans.
And next one I've read, the next one I've used many times.
Right. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as green herbs. Now, if you remember, we were supposed to be vegetarians. Now He is saying even meat you can eat. Now, as teachers and preachers, we all the time say all. All means all. Well, we know that there are poisonous plants and poisonous meat. A blowfish will kill you. Right. You know, there are certain things we're not supposed to eat. But He will make that clear to us later. But here it says, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I think what He is saying is we're going to start getting out of just eating plants and eating other things, but that doesn't mean that you can eat every single thing. There are some things that are poisonous. So God blessed Noah and his sons and gave them a commandment. In the early chapters of Genesis, we saw every time a blessing came from God, a command was given. The command was the same command given to Adam and the animals in earlier verses. God was looking to populate the earth with His creation. But now He has removed almost all the people and animals, and the earth was nearly empty again. In verse 2, God put the fear of man into animals. Before this time, animals were not afraid of men, and even a lion was like a cow in demeanor. We were all vegetarians before the flood, but now, as we see in verse 3, that we are given permission to eat meat, and all animals will now fear us. We have now become the top predator on the earth. Verse 3 should be taken as a general statement because we know later there will be rules given to restrict some animals from being eaten. Just as there are some plants that are poison, the same can be said for some meats that we shouldn't eat. This was just a statement that we are at the top of the food chain and God is now creating. I mean, like if you eat a Gila monster, then you deserve what you get, you know. So there's certain things that we're not supposed to eat. 9:4. But you shall not eat the flesh with its life, that is its blood. Surely for your life blood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it. And from the hand of man, from the hand of every man's brother, I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God He made man. So He is now saying, we're going to set up a government, and you're going to run it, and if somebody kills somebody, you're going to kill them. We're not waiting for a lightning strike or something come down from God. He is commanding them that if you kill someone, then you're going to die also. This is also why when you see in a village or something like that, a lion comes in or a crocodile or whatever and eats a man, they go after it because it has the taste of blood in its mouth. Now it's going to chase men. Now we're not talking about manslaughter or an accidental killing or something where you didn't really mean it. This is premeditated murder. But this ought to do away with this stuff about God not going for the capital punishment. He is setting it out, right? Another thing about this is, you remember we were talking about the Nephilim. Now this is just a few chapters after the Nephilim. That the sons of God, the fallen ones, came into the daughters of men and produced something different. Whatever it was, God didn't like it and He brought the flood. Now He is saying that it's against the rules to eat any living thing. He doesn't want you to go out here and grab a chicken and bite its head off and eat it raw. That's not what we're supposed to do. The reason this meant something to me is it brought me back to cannibalism. And people say, well, you can't say that. The Bible doesn't say that. And I said, all I know is that these guys had 2 rows of teeth and 6 toes and 6 fingers. Now, and God didn't like it. So they were doing something that he didn't like. And the stories are that they probably were cannibals.
They
And,
found bones
right.
that had teeth marks. in it.
Exactly. That's what, see, the archaeologists are not spouting exactly what's in the Bible. But what we can tell by the Bible is that they did something that God didn't like. And one of the first rules he said was, you got to kill it first. Don't eat something raw. Okay? Verse 4 speaks of eating raw meat while it's still alive. When reading this, I had to wonder how closely the theory was that said the Nephilim were cannibals. This theory would support, once again, the reason God decided to kill everyone on the planet. Look at the verdict God decrees in verse 5. Now, for the first time, God has set up a government on the earth among men. Verse 6 tells us the murder of men will require other men to shed his blood because he is in the image of God. Any man or beast will have to forfeit their life that kills another human. This sentence will be handed out by other humans. The idea of human government is set up here. This law was not just for the Hebrews, but it was meant for everyone. The verse right here should be set aside, set to rest the idea of capital punishment. Here in verse 5 and 6, God himself tells us a murderer should die by the hand of men. Being anti-death penalty is anti-God. Trying to morph God into tolerating murder is not a reality. Verse 6 is referring to premeditated murder, not accidental killing or manslaughter. Now later on, they set up a deal like sanctuary cities. What do they call it? It might have been sanctuary cities, I don't know. But let's say, for instance, that you accidentally killed someone. It was usually up to the family members to do the killing. So they were going to chase you down. Well, they had cities of refuge. That's where you could go.
Cities of refuge.
You could go somewhere else and hide, and it was against the law for this other tribe to go into this tribe and kill you. So then you committed murder. So there was, in other words, if they escaped you, then you couldn't kill them. So they had cities of refuge that you could go to if you had an accidental killing. Now murder, you could chase them on in there and get them. Genesis 9:7. And as for you, be fruitful and multiply, he says it again. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply in it. Then again, God repeats his command to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. He starts out with, and as for you, to mean they should produce fruit pleasing to God and multiply their generations. I think there was an inferred authority given to Noah here. So Noah was the top guy at this time because there was only 8 people on the earth. And he was given authority to pass down through the generations the rules and the oral law. If an apple tree produces apples as fruit, shouldn't a man produce fruit to God, as he is designed after God? Genesis 9:8. Then God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds and the cattle and every beast of the earth with you. Of all that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth. I want to call your attention to verse 8, where God spoke to Noah and his sons. God literally spoke to Noah. It wasn't a still small voice or a nudge. God is physically speaking to Noah, telling them to be fruitful, and now he is about to make a covenant with him and his descendants. In verse 10, God added even the creatures with all the people, even Gentiles. So there's no Jews yet. So this is everybody on the planet and the animals. And he's about to make a covenant. And I just wanted to point out that he is still speaking personally to the people on the earth. It wasn't like what you might think the Holy Spirit speaking to someone. This was a voice speaking.
Like you talking to us.
Exactly. They could hear and they knew it was God. Just like
That's the only way they would know what to do is if he personally told them.
right, John the Baptist baptized Jesus. He said, "This is my son, and I'm well pleased." And they all heard. Some heard thunder, but they all heard. And you need to be able to read the thunder, I think. Genesis 9:11. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. And if you'll remember, I tried to make a point of saying this was a flood over the whole earth. This is not a flood, a local flood. So he is making a covenant with the whole earth, not just an area. Okay. In verse 11, God's covenants to never again destroy the earth with a flood. Notice he said nothing about fire. He said nothing about destroying the earth again, except it wouldn't be by a flood. 2 Peter 3:5. For this they willfully forget that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, by which the world that then existed perished, being flooded by water. So see, he's bringing out Noah's flood here. That's what he's talking about. Then the very next verse, he says, but the heavens and the earth, which are now preserved by the same word, are reserved for fire until the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. So he is promising to destroy the earth again. It just won't be by a flood. In verse 2, 12 and 13, God says the covenant sign would be a rainbow in the clouds. Again, this tells us that we don't know what it was like pre-flood. We had no rainbow before the flood, as there was no rain. Even if you can imagine a fog over the whole earth, there wouldn't be a rainbow, even though there's water in the air. But when it rains, there's a rainbow. We have clouds and there's no rain, there's no rainbow. But if we have a rain cloud where it is actually raining, even if it's far away, you can see a rainbow. See, I'm not saying this is a supernatural happening. I'm just saying that he made it happen so that we could see his covenant with us. Now, what does Satan do? Satan's a liar. Everybody says Satan is a liar.
Satan
Satan's a
is.
liar.
Satan is also a counterfeiter. In fact, he is a more of a counterfeiter than a liar, because what he wants to do is look like God.
Right.
He wants to fool you into thinking he's God. So the rainbow today is for sodomites. That's what he has done. He has perverted God's covenant with his people and made it mean something totally different and evil.
San Francisco flag holder.
Well, it's everywhere. I mean, this is now common usage of a rainbow is to represent something to do with sodomy.
Right.
And was the biggest thing to me when Obama shined the lights on the White House in a rainbow pattern. Everybody was jumping up and down, so proud and happy and everything, and it just immediately came to my mind as it was in the days of Noah. Now we know Noah had evil times and everything, but we also know about the covenant God made with his people. And I said, it's getting close. It's getting close. If you keep watch. And the very next verse was about Lot. And what do we know about Lot? You know? So it's all coming together if you're just spiritual enough to have eyes to see and ears to hear. You know? There may be additional light characteristics that were not available before the flood to make a rainbow. I'm not saying the rainbow is a supernatural occurrence or a natural phenomenon, but God gave it to Noah at this time to mark God's promise. Genesis 9:16. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all the flesh that's on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all the flesh of the earth. So God is stating that the rainbow will be in rain clouds and remind him of his promise that he made this day. Have you ever noticed the rainbow only appears in rain clouds and not regular clouds?
Right.
9:18. Now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. Now I wanted to mark this right here, that every time that we see Canaan, I want you to think about it. I want to set a little buzzer or a bell, and every time you see Canaan, because what he's doing is he's saying there's something special about Canaan. We're going to find out what it is. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. And Noah began to be a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. In verse 18, the children of Noah are named, but extra verbiage is given to Ham. As I am your teacher, I want you to start to develop a buzzer in your brain that when you see Canaan in Scripture, that buzzer should sound and you should stop and read carefully again where it's mentioned. Canaan is the promised land and the homeland of the Jews. So what is in it and how it got there is very important to understand the relationship of the land to God and His people. We are reminded that these three sons and their wives populated the whole earth after the flood. Verse 20 tells us that Noah was a farmer and he planted a vineyard. I wanted to put in here that Ham is the father of a lot of people in Africa and places around, but they are always against Shem's people. So we got three sets of people. We got Shem, which is the Jews and the Semites. And then we have Japheth, which is the Gentiles. And we have Ham, which is the one that everyone comes from that's against the Jews. So, well, there's a few in Shem's bunch that are against. But next week, I hope y'all will forgive me because I'm going to do the best I can, but it's going to be the hardest lesson yet. This is setting up the earth from these three men. Is setting up the earth for the 70 nations. And the 70 nations are all the way in Revelation. So, anytime you see the 70 nations, he's talking about this time when he is setting it up and dividing the land to these people. And they have tribe after tribe after tribe. You know, you're going to read about Girgashites and Hittites and all this other kind of stuff. And you need to figure out where these people are. And you'll see things like Magog. You'll know where that is when we get through with this, because Magog was settled by these certain people from Ham. And they're going to be coming against God's people in the end. It's the war of Gog and Magog, you know. So you're going to see that God doesn't change the name. If you'll remember, Istanbul was once Constantinople, and then something before that I can't remember. And then Stalingrad was St. Petersburg. You know, we change the names of things, but it's the same place. So what you're going to find is that God remembers the original names. And also, I believe that He puts angels over an area to watch over it. Michael was the angel for Israel. So that's mainly the only angels you really hear about in here is Michael and Gabriel. You know, that's the named angels that He has. But there's an angel over America, and there's an angel over wherever else, you know. Well,
He's supposed to be the biggest and the baddest and strongest one.
well, he was, yeah, but that's because he's over God's country, you know, and God's nation. So the Prince of Persia is mentioned, but no name. But the Prince of Persia went up against Gabriel, and Michael had to come in and bail him out and help him. So these wars in heaven are fought in a spiritual sense. We can't see, but the results are on the earth. And we're going to get into that next week, hopefully. But like I said, this is going to be very difficult for me. Well, also you're going to find out like Elam was Persia. So you're going to see these people having babies and breaking off and everything. Well, they're going to come up with a name, and it's going to mean Egypt and Persia and all these things, but they're going to keep the original names in the Bible. So it's kind of like, I don't want to know all this, but you kind of have to. You know, if you're going to be able to read the Bible in completion, you know, in completeness, you're going to have to understand vaguely where these areas are. Now, I wanted to take a rabbit trail just for a moment about wine, because Noah planted a vineyard. There's nothing wrong with wine. It's mentioned all throughout the Bible. In the Bible days, you had wine, milk, and water, and that was about it. There was a term called new wine that meant grape juice. The term wine was used for fermented grape juice. Jesus and all the apostles drank wine at every meal. It was beneficial for the stomach troubles and was used for blessings. It was served at weddings. Jesus himself made 3 jugs of wine from water in a wedding in Canaan. The Bible is clear that to be holy and set apart is to not drink too much wine. Getting drunk is the sin, not drinking wine. Now, on to Noah and his problems. Genesis 9:21. Then he drank of the wine and was drunk. And the reason I said that is because there's so many people that absolutely teetotalers, and I understand why and everything, but they have to realize that for millennia, people have been drinking wine. It's the getting drunk that's bad. Okay? The purpose, though, is that Noah planted a vineyard, and we don't know, could it be that there wasn't any yeast before the flood? Maybe the rottenness came in later. You know, vinegar is mentioned, that's rotten wine, you know. And so it's possible that you couldn't even ferment wine before the flood. I don't know. This is just a suggestion that some rabbis have made, is that it's possible that it wasn't able to get drunk before that. I don't know. But now we know it's after the flood, and maybe he didn't know that this was going to get him drunk. Maybe he didn't know what this buzz was that he had. He didn't understand. Don't know. I'm not trying to make
Maybe he
excuses
just got
for it.
drunk.
Then he drank of the wine and was drunk and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, bingo, ding, 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 there's the father of Canaan again, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. It's very important that we get this sentence. He saw the nakedness of his father and he told his 2 brothers outside. Because there's all kinds of theories on why Canaan was cursed later, okay? But Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and went backwards, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. There's a whole lot of verbiage here to show that they weren't looking at his nakedness, but Ham did and made fun of him, okay? Noah drank fermented grape juice and became drunk. We find the guy was saved for his righteousness over every man, woman, and child on the earth got drunk and naked. Everyone is still a sinner, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So I want this to prove to people that Noah was not some kind of a walk-on-water type patriarch. He was just a man, you know.
Yeah.
He believed God, and he sinned like the rest of us, but his generations were found perfect. He was perfect in his generations. So that's where I got into the DNA stuff before. Verse 22 should have set off that little buzzer in your brain. Ham, the father of Canaan, is repeated here again as if there was something God was trying to get across to you to notice. Ham saw his father naked and told his 2 brothers about it. There are many scenarios talked about for these verses. But taking them straight forward, Ham made fun of his father's nakedness, and the other brothers covered him without looking. There are theories that Ham may have been a homosexual. Now, these are from various people.
Where are they coming from?
We'll see in just a minute. Or that Noah's nakedness was actually his wife naked. There are places in the Bible where they speak of somebody seeing their nakedness. You're not supposed to see their nakedness. Well, they're talking about you're not supposed to see your father's wife naked. So that's a figure of speech that they use sometimes for that. One theory is that Ham had sex with his mother, which produced the offspring named Canaan. One of the more popular theories is Ham had a homosexual sex act with his father because somehow Noah knew what his younger son had done to him. If Noah knew that Ham was inclined to men already, and there was evidence of something being done to him, there isn't really that many people to blame for what Noah found when he woke up. I think Ham saw his father drunk and naked and made fun of him. Whatever the truth is, his brothers did the right thing, not by looking at him and covering up. And later we will see a commandment dedicated to honoring your father and your mother so you can live a long time in the land God has given you. Mocking your father in front of your brothers made Noah very upset. I'm sure performing some sex act on Noah would qualify also. Now here's the verse that gets these people going. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. So he could have just said, well, I knew I was naked and now I'm covered up, so how did he know it was Ham or something? I don't know. But they're saying he might have had a sex act. One of them even said he might have castrated him. You know, it gets wild and crazy.
That's what I'm saying, ain't none of that in the Bible.
Right. Well, that's what I'm going by here. That's why the first verses talked about him
When he
seeing.
said know the younger son, he knew the character of the sons.
Right. Right. So the reason I wanted to emphasize the first verses was to say he saw his father's nakedness and went out and told his other brothers. So this was embarrassing to Noah, and he didn't honor his father. So anyway, but this is the verse that gets people going and said he knew what his son had done to him. Then he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants, he shall be to his brethren. Now why didn't he curse Ham? But he's cursing his son. Okay? And he said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. So he's producing right now. Shem means something about God, is God's glory, I think. And Japheth means enlargement. So Japheth is going to be the father of the Gentiles, and Shem is going to be the father of the Jews. And Ham is left out.
That's son.
You remember I told you the Ham, the father of Canaan. Ham, the
Yes.
father of Canaan.
Yes.
Every time he repeats
That's
it,
what
he
I'm
wants
trying
you
to
to
get
get it.
straight in my mind. Is I know
Right.
you're making a point of it, and I'm trying to get it in my mind.
I'm not making a good point if you're not getting it. But that's the whole idea of Ham, the father of Canaan. Like, why is he talking about Canaan all the time?
Yeah.
Well, here, he instead of cursing Ham, he's cursing Canaan. Okay? Because God knows that Canaan is going to found Canaan.
Yeah.
He's the founder of Canaan. He named the city after him. Okay? And Japheth means enlargement, so he's going to be rich, and the Gentiles are going to have wealth and land and stuff. And Ham is going to have problems all through his descendants. Okay? We're going to see that next week. So Noah woke up from his wine and saw that he was covered, and somehow knew Ham had done it. Instead of cursing Ham, he cursed Ham's son, Canaan. Then he blessed Shem, who became the ancestor of the Jews. In verse 27, Japheth, the ancestor of the Gentiles, was blessed also, and Canaan's descendants will serve them and the descendants of Shem. And this is why I keep telling people about we are part of the Jews and they're part of us. We've been adopted into the family of God. Okay? This is why the Jews and the Gentiles are coming together. Ham is left out. Okay? Noah named this curse at the time he got drunk, and it became a prophecy of the future. Many say Noah was pronouncing the curse here, but I believe God has revealed to Noah what will happen in the future. If I were to curse someone, it would mean that I had some sort of power I don't have. God, however, reveals things to his people all the time. And I kind of made a big deal out of this morning in class, because if I cursed you, it would be witchcraft.
Right.
But Noah, a just man, a righteous man, would have seen what God gave him and spoke it. I don't think he cursed his own sons, his own grandson. I think he saw what God was going to do and pronounced it.
Like a prophecy.
It's a prophecy and not a curse, because I have a problem with a righteous man cursing someone. I believe it's witchcraft, and we have to sometimes cast out curses. You know,
Right.
this is just a little faux pas with me. It's the use of the word curse. I got a real problem with the curse. I don't have a problem with a prophecy. And I believe that Noah had something revealed to him and he pronounced it. Yeah, he said, cursed be Canaan.
Yes.
That was the verbiage he used. A servant of servants he shall be to his brethren. And he said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and made he dwell in the tents of Shem, and made Canaan be his servant. So it's just like I said, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other, probably. But I don't know if Noah could curse his own grandson and have it all come about. But if you think about this, that curse is today, even. It's from this time
Forever.
to today. It's
Well, they
forever.
talk about the generational curse, the passing it down to your next generation.
I'll give you a little hint of what we're going to talk about next week. I don't like to give my stuff ahead of time, but I'm probably going to be struggling next week anyway. Ham's descendants went into Africa, Cush, Somalia, Ethiopia, all that mess. They have gold, oil, silver, diamonds, everything you could ever want. And look at it.
Maybe it'll make it easier to understand next time.
They're starving.
He's struggling with
Poorest
debt.
continent on the planet.
Huh?
That's the poorest continent on the planet.
Exactly. Today,
Yeah.
after all these thousands
They
of
have
years.
all those
And they're cutting
riches.
each other off
Exactly.
every day.
So-
They're poor in Haiti.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to cover that. And Noah lived lived after the flood 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years and he died. Here we get just a historical look at Noah's life to show that he lived 950 years, and it was 350 years after the flood. Now there's a lot of people, if you'll remember, God said that I'm going to give them 120 years. You remember the 120 years before. This proves that that's not true, because there were people lived a long time, and him even 950. Now before, you'll see 300, it gets smaller and smaller as we go. But the 120 years is, I'm only going to strive with man for another 120 years, and I'm killing them. There are some people that will interpret that 120 years to be, I'm saying that a man can only live 120 years.
My family.
But see, in Psalms, it talks about 70 or 80 years.
Always so.
So after all this longevity goes away because of the changes in the atmosphere and whatever, then it's 70 or 80 years. So the 120, well, he was just saying, I'm going to give you another 120 years to repent, or I'm going to kill you. Okay?